Hello! Thank you for tuning in, and this is Above the Bias, and I'm your handsome host, Larry Delgado. Our topic today is going to be about the American democracy and political finance. Very important and very interesting stuff, I might say. Our guest tonight is going to be Terry Finnick on my left. He is a lobbyist on Capitol Hill that represents a few Fortune 500 companies, and John Trimore, a co-founder and developer of a political watchdog site that tracks political spending. How are you guys doing tonight? Hi Larry, I'm extremely excited to be out here. It's really great to get out of my office and away from that computer screen. Thank you, Larry, for inviting me on your show. I'm super excited to come participate in this debate, and it's really great to get off Capitol Hill for a little bit. The first question is, what is the job or responsibilities of a politician? Terry, you will be the first one to answer. I'd have to say that a politician's job or responsibility is to represent the people that elected him, because that's what he is. He's an elected representative who creates legislature to benefit the people and to boost the economy. Thank you, Terry. A very well said response. Now, John, I'm only going to say this once, but after Terry finishes, you can immediately begin. All right, go ahead. What is the job or responsibilities of a politician? Well, Terry said the definition of a politician very well, that he's an elected representative meant to create legislature to benefit the people and boost the economy. But in actuality, it's very far from the truth. He's a professional fundraiser, he's a campaigner, he wins elections. The average workday of a politician may last 10 hours, but 5 of those hours are making phone calls, raising more money for the next election. It may not even be for their election. Thank you. To address some of the concerns of John, I'd like to just say that a large portion of donations made to a politician comes from donations of $200 or less. When a politician is making these calls, he is getting the opinion of the people that are electing him. He gets to hear their opinion, get their view on things, and hopefully get some of their money, which is a very good indicator of whether or not they are going to be successful in their campaign. And I also just want to say it's not easy to be a politician. You could say that in their job description they are a fundraiser and campaigner, because every 2 to 6 years, depending on their position in Congress, they have to go for a re-election. I would like to say I completely disagree with Terry. His statement that a politician is hearing the opinion of the average Joe during these phone calls that he's making 5 hours out of the 10-hour workday is completely false. He is making these phone calls to talk to super PACs, to talk to lobbyists like Terry, and other corporations where they can make significant donations to themselves, to their party, and to other political constituents. My English. It's important to note that these phone calls aren't allowed to be made at the federal building. They have to go across the street to special call centers created by their political party, and then they can make these fundraising phone calls. And during these calls, it is very prevalent that if a politician holds any significant influence in a specific committee, to use their influence to strong-arm corporations. There are multiple examples where this occurs. Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt, gentlemen, but we're going to have to move on to the next question. For those who may not be aware, George Washington held a strong view against political parties, and I'm going to read a short excerpt to give you an example of his opinion. Let me now take a more comprehensive view and warn you in the most solemn manner against the baneful effects of the spirit of party. The question is, George Washington, in his farewell address, warned against political parties. What is your opinion on his opinion? Thank you, Larry. And to answer your question, I think George Washington was incredibly forward-thinking and insightful in his comments against political parties for 2 main reasons. One, political revenge, which we had a great example of during the government shutdown, where the Republican Party refused to raise the debt ceiling while the Health Care Reform Act was still in law, and it has a very troubling polarization effect on just the American society. I don't want to see that it's state against state. I don't want neighbor against neighbor. That isn't what politics should be about. It should be about compromise. Meaning no disrespect to our first president, George Washington, who I believe is an incredible man, his viewpoint really isn't applicable to current state of modern politics. For one, during that time, the United States was in a trade war with Britain. And it's also, voting was incredibly sectional, that if you're from the South, you voted one way, if you're from the North, you voted another. So I would think that political parties, while they may lead to some forms of polarization among society, that's just natural competitiveness of Americans coming out. Terry, I have a few problems with your statements that you made above. For one, I think that I already stated that George Washington's opinion is completely still irrelevant. No, we're not in a trade war, but we mandate sectional voting through the Electoral College, and I think that there's plenty of evidence to show that the Americans we're getting sick of political parties. 40% of individuals now claim to be independent. Gentlemen, I am sorry that I have to interrupt that passionate debate, but we have to move on to the third and final question. What, if anything, would you change in the American democracy today? Well, Larry, I think the best change we could make to our democracy today would be the removal of political contribution limits entirely. For two reasons. One, it's a matter of freedom of speech. The Supreme Court during the FEC versus McCutcheon case stated that political contributions are a form of freedom of speech, and I believe that since the Constitution defends the right for free speech, I don't understand why the contribution limits haven't been thrown out already. Another thing is that, of course, people are going to say if there's more money in politics, there's going to be more corruption. But I have to disagree. We cannot assume a politician is corrupt, and of course, a politician still has to go through the election process. If the people believe he's corrupt and have a problem, they will not vote for him. That is how our democracy works, and I believe it is working well. Well, Larry, I think the most significant change we could make to a democracy today would be the implementation of online voting. I believe this approach towards direct democracy would be incredibly beneficial to our government and would be a step away from the indirect democracy that we were founded upon during a time that the majority of the people within the United States couldn't even read. But now, in current times, a majority of U.S. individuals hold a college degree. So I believe that we are at a point in our history where the people should be able to show their real voice within the government and have a vote that actually matters. Security will be a massive issue if we move our voting online. Russia and China have been hacking us for over $300 billion each year, and that is just through private corporations. Can you imagine what they'd do if they had the opportunity to manipulate our political elections? The reason we only have a 40% voter turnout is because people do not leave their homes to go to a voting booth, and I don't think that we should make it any easier for those individuals, because a democracy is a right. Terry, your idea is abysmal. Let me just say, you are selling America to the wealthy. You are allowing them to pre-select a candidate before the majority of Americans are allowed to even choose. By removing political contribution limits, the only way someone will be able to compete is with the backing of corporations, super PACs, and the wealthiest of Americans. And you can bet the only candidates that are going to be receiving that backing is those who represent their interests. I'm heartbroken to have to say this, but we are all out of time. Gentlemen, I'd like to thank you for coming out and providing such an insightful and interesting conversation. And again, I'd like to say, this is the Above the Bias. I'm Larry Delgado, and I'll see you next time.